Welcome to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Today is another awesome guest, awesome ambassador for KickAss Careers. Her name is Kate Parr, and she's an industrial mechanic millwright in Ontario, Canada. Coming from a family of university graduates, she never pictured herself in the trades. She always got good grades and was an excellent student, so naturally she was always told that she was too smart for trade work. She knew herself better than that, though. Always learning best, doing hands-on work, she dedicated herself to learning a trade. Her intelligence certainly comes to light in this episode when we discuss everything from the perception of the trades to what can be done to change it, and all the way to how it can be used to live your definition of success. As for her definition, a career that allows her to be independent, happy, and challenged. As always, this show is not monetized, and we don't run ads. We rely strictly on word of mouth from our listeners to further the mission. So if you enjoyed this episode, please take a minute to rate it, review it, share it. Please, the future generations of tradespeople depend on it. They depend on you. So thank you again, and enjoy this episode of the Blue is the New White podcast with Kate Parr. Welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. I'm super excited about today's guest, Miss Kate Parr. Kate, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Me too. I know that we've gone back and forth a few times already in emails, and I can tell you are excited to be on the show. I'm excited to have you on the show, and something tells me you have a lot to say about the subject at hand. So why don't we start off by just telling the audience who you are, where you're from, and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, of course. As mentioned, my name is Kate. I work as an industrial mechanic millwright in Ontario, Canada. I think what's interesting about my story is that I never, ever expected I would be in the position that I am doing an apprenticeship. But aside from that, I truly love my career, and I work really hard to promote the trades and try to get young girls and boys interested the same way that I was interested, even when I didn't know the trades were really an option for me.
Yeah, which is often the case, right? I mean, we talk a lot about that. And it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, right off the bat, never expected to be in the trades. Do you know how often I actually hear that? You know,
probably all the time. I hear it all the time too.
It's unbelievable. You know, I've dubbed the phrase now, you know, most people tend to arrive on accident but stay on purpose. You know,
yeah, totally.
And that's just common. So let's go all the way back to, like, I don't know, your high school years. Did you know about the trades in high school?
I knew about the trades. I knew about the general, like, welder, carpenter, the trades that you see when you're driving down the highway and there's people working in construction, those types of trades. I think my story really does start at the very beginning of high school. I was doing, at my high school, they had like electives that you could take. And one of the electives was integrated technology. So you got to go from like wood shop to auto shop, metal shop, and spend some time in every class. You got to learn how to work with your hands. And I took that class because it seemed like the best elective out of all of them. And the whole time I thought, this is really fun. I enjoy this, but I never, ever considered it to be a career. So moving forward into grade 10 and the start of grade 11, do you feel...
Wait, I'm going to stop you right there. I have a question. Why didn't you consider it to be a career?
Because I come from a family of university graduates, and I always did pretty well in school. And I thought stereotypically the trades are just for people who can't, get into university or college. And it's kind of a fallback career. So it never struck me because it was always perceived that I would be too smart to go into the trades. As awful as it sounds, it's true.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah.
That's often the case. All right. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, of course. So going into grade 10 and 11, I had a lot of pressure to figure out what I wanted to do, because you need to organize your course load. If you go into the sciences, you need to start taking that in grade 11 and 12 to get into a science bachelor's degree. So I was feeling really stressed. And the more I looked into what I was doing in high school, these courses that I was taking, I was pushed to go take university level, like higher academic level courses. And the whole time I was really bored. I was honestly quite depressed. I didn't like going to school anymore because high school was just presented in like a chalkboard, teacher at the front of the class, go home and do your homework. And that wasn't the way that I liked learning. And I started realizing that it's not too late to decide that that isn't the path I want to go. I didn't want to do a 4-year program where that would be my life. Lectures would be my life. So along with that, the more I started looking into university and especially looking at the bills of university, I thought, holy cow, like if this is going to be my pathway, I'm going to have a lot of debt to pay off. And no matter what degree I get, there's a chance that I may not have a job lined up for me after I graduate. And that honestly scared me. I've always enjoyed working, so I wanted a job after I spend that much on my education. So as I was looking online or just talking to people, the trades kept coming up and up, and I learned what an apprenticeship was, how you can get paid to learn and work through, go to school, work, and it seemed to all make like way too much sense to me. And I couldn't believe I hadn't thought of that before. But I always kept remembering that it was that stereotype that held me back from believing I could have a job in the trades.
Yeah, and I think that stereotype is, I mean, that's basically all I talk about is that stereotype. And for me, it wasn't that the trades were outwardly bashed. Like, I hear that sometimes, but that wasn't the case for me. For me, they were just invisible. They weren't ever talked about. It wasn't anything that. It wasn't anywhere, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so with that lack of education, lack of knowledge, I mean, before getting into the trades, I had no idea, really what it was. I had a picture in my head of a plumber that was put there by, the modern stereotypes and media portrayals and stuff like that, so I thought I knew what a plumber was. I thought I knew what they looked like, and what was all involved. I mean, and it wasn't until years after high school that, I found out that I was completely wrong. And then that's when, that's when most people, I think, find out, if they ever find out at all, and the perception begins to change. Cause I've heard that a lot. I've heard it on the flip side of people going to college and universities and saying, man, I wish I knew about the trades in high school because my life would have been completely different.
Yeah, along the way, I've met going to college. I went to college straight after high school to do a millwright program, which gave me about half of the education that I needed to complete my apprenticeship. So I got a bit of school over with, and then I started working. But in that college term, it was interesting because going straight from high school to college, I didn't realize just the mixture of students. And most students weren't my age. They'd gone to university, or they were in their 30s, their 40s. This was like their second career, because they just didn't know about millwright, or they didn't think about the trade. So it was interesting, like almost a shock for me, just being with the diversity of the people that I was with. I didn't expect it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the heart of it, what do you think that is, as far as, I mean, because we all know, right? We've seen this all over social media as of late, the last couple of years. We know how much, maybe not opportunity is in the trades, because that's what we're trying to get across now, is how much opportunity is there. But we certainly know how much can be made in the trades, right? Monetarily. Yeah. And so, what went wrong? I mean, guidance counselors are supposed to set students up for success, right? Yeah. And they're not supposed to determine the success of, what success is to anybody. They're just supposed to be able to set everybody individually up for how they define the success themselves.
Yeah.
And this seems like a fantastic path to do that. So what's the problem?
I think, honestly, at the very root of the problem, now this is just my opinion, sure, but I think as your mission suggests, that blue collar and white collar have quite a big separation. And I think in history and even now, there is a separation of class. And I think a lot of that does have to do with higher education. I think people believe that if they have a bachelor degree, then they're entitled to make more money. They're entitled to have a lavish lifestyle, perhaps. And the trades have never been regarded in that way, unless you have an uncle who works as, an electrician and you know how much money he makes, you know the house that he has, but there's just no advertisement there's not enough advertisement, at least in my mind, for how well you can do in the trades and support your lifestyle, support your family. I just think it's a separation of class that is sometimes evidently there, sometimes not very evidently there, but it exists. And I think it's just old stigma and new stigma. I don't really know how to put it, but I think it's just it's a separation that keeps us apart. I don't know.
Yeah, I know how to say it. Trades just aren't sexy, right?
Yeah, pretty much, I guess.
I mean, by modern definition, I think that the trades, like you said, there isn't enough marketing, I don't think, to today's youth about what the trades actually are. You've got a lot of people these days that want to grow up to be, stockbrokers or Instagram influencers or video game testers or whatever. These career paths have a certain appeal, right? But that's because of the way that they're portrayed and the way that they're advertised and marketed. And the way that the trades typically have been marketed are just not that.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with you. I wish there was more marketing, and I wish people had their respect for apprenticeship, or I don't even like using the term like blue collar for myself. I just don't think that there needs to be a separation between blue collar and white collar necessarily. I think that I love what I do. I love my lifestyle, and I've afforded my lifestyle up to this point, and I'm really proud that I'm independent in my apprenticeship before even being licensed, that I afford every penny of my lifestyle by myself, when all of my friends right now are just graduating university, and unfortunately with COVID they're finding it very difficult to find employment. I feel really grateful to have my job, and I don't think that I should ever be put below anybody for this career path and the lifestyle that I have. I'm really proud of what I have.
Agreed. As most tradespeople are, right? I mean, there is a sense of pride that you can feel when you're building something or fixing something. You can take a step back, look at it, and say, "I did that. I'm responsible for that." It's not the same feeling doing data entry and stepping back from a computer screen and looking at a spreadsheet and saying, "I did that." It's a completely different feeling, and my hope for everybody is that they can feel that at some point, because it's great, right? I mean, that sense of satisfaction that you get is fantastic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you anymore. Like when I discovered the trades and apprenticeship, the next thought that popped into my mind was, oh my God, like there's over 100 trades in Ontario. I don't even know where to start. I don't know what trade to take on if I'm going to work in the trades. They have it split between transportation, construction, industrial, and oh my goodness, I should know this, but there's another, I think it's service trades. There's the four. And I started looking at mostly construction and automotive to begin with. I didn't really think of industrial because I thought, oh, industrial, like that's too heavy for a woman. I could never do that. So I started out with a co-op in automotive, and I found that working on cars just wasn't really for me. Working above my head was not really for me. So looking into millwright, like I wanted to be a mechanic because I knew that I enjoyed the satisfaction of, this is broken. Okay, I get to use my knowledge and my hands-on skills to be able to fix it. And right in front of your face, you get to watch something go from broken to fixed. And that instant gratification is amazing because you're not relying on somebody else to tell you, as you said, yeah, that spreadsheet was great, thank you, leave it on my desk, or something like that. Like you, in front of your own eyes, get to see your hard work come into play and fix something. Like, I don't know, for me, being a mechanic, that's what makes me happy. That's what puts a smile on my face. Maybe not for others, but I love that, as you said, instant satisfaction of knowing that I did that. And that's where I find pride. Again, as you mentioned, that is my pride, going to work and doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I mean, it goes above and beyond that too. The sense of pride that you get when you see it and when you know what you did, But, and this might sound crazy, but even when you accumulate the battle scars to show it, not like, I'm not saying like a huge gash and,
I
safety
have a blood
concerns.
blister today.
Oh, there you go. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we all of us in the trades have felt this at some point, right? Where you're turning a wrench for so long, you start to get the calluses on your hands, or you get home, you got grease on your arms or whatnot. But I mean, it just, this wave of accomplishment, at least for me, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, when I got home and I was just beat up, but I was still standing, and I knew how much I accomplished that day because of how exhausted I was.
Yeah.
That's how I could sleep at night. I just
Totally.
knew that, what I did made a difference some way, somehow.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have like a story that popped into my mind as you're saying this. A part of being like industrial mechanic, on top of being a mechanic, like I'm a contractor. So I actually work in a bunch of different industries, which is neat because I get to learn how the world works, how manufacturing works. But I did one shift at a power plant, and essentially they had a big steam turbine, and the steam turbine went into failure, and I was asked to show up on shift just to support and turn the shaft of the turbine like by huge mechanical advantage, so that if there's like heat running through the turbine, it won't warp the shaft if you're spinning it. That's the logic, right? So anyway, I was just hired to turn a shaft every half hour, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a stupid shift, but oh well. So I show up and they're like, hey, we think we found the problem. Like, can you help us fix it? And I said, absolutely. And they're like, well, we need to know that you're going to stick with us. Like, if this becomes a 16-hour shift, you're here with us. And I'm like, absolutely, like, sign me up. So I was responsible for gathering all of the tooling and then assisting the head millwright. It was just him and I and another electrician in fixing this turning gear motor on the end of the shaft so that we didn't have to manually turn it. It would turn itself when it wasn't operating. So anyway, long story short, we got the turbine back up and running, and it had been down for a few days, and it was in like critical emergency situation. So again, being able to see something like this, millions of dollars worth of turbine, and this power plant supplying my province, supplying power to the grid that I use to power, my light switches, being able to be a part of that project and to see that in front of my eyes and know that my hard work went into that. I drove home. It was like a 13-hour shift. I drove home. I walked through the door. I closed the door, put my back on the door, and I just cried for like 10 minutes straight because I was so proud of my work, and I knew that it wouldn't go unnoticed. And I knew that, again, when I hit my light switch, that was because of something that I did. And I wasn't even that experienced. This happened like a year ago. I was still an apprentice. I mean, I still am an apprentice now, but yeah, that was one of the coolest times of my career. It still gives me chills thinking about it.
Yeah, you're giving me chills too. I mean, knock it off. But no, it's people don't realize, you can't do that in every career. You can't, there are very few, I'd venture to say there are very few careers out there where you can get that much satisfaction, where, I mean, it literally just takes over you emotionally, and I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff.
It is.
No, I think that's really fantastic. I had a question while you were talking, and I almost lost. I think, did I lose it? Hold on, wait for it. Wait for it. We were talking about turbines. Oh yeah, okay. So, one of the things that I find when I talk to today's youth, young people of today, is that a big thing is they want to make a big difference, right? They want to contribute to their community. They want to change the world. They want to do something that really just changes or makes a difference in one aspect or another. And it's sad to me that nobody realizes what kind of difference can be made in the skilled trades. Because, and I just had this conversation with Dee on my last podcast, that, it's almost like because because everything we're surrounded by is a result of the trades, that it
Yeah,
becomes this white noise, right? This
for sure.
static that people just don't realize, what goes into it and what kind of difference they can make. I mean, like you said, fixing this turbine that supplies electricity to your entire province.
Mhm.
I mean, without you there, without somebody there to take care of this issue, I
Yeah.
mean, the repercussions are astronomical,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
people don't know, people don't see. I mean,
Wow.
you're an unsung hero. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess a little bit. When I talk to people about my job, there's so many different aspects that I talk about or that I completely forget to talk about. But the fact that I, as a contractor, get to work in food industries or steel industries, like I work on the machines that make the steel to put up buildings, and I work on machines that make human food, that make pet food, that supply our chain. These factories never go down because even during COVID, everybody needs food, everybody needs power. It's hard to explain to people just how much millwrights and trades have an impact on their everyday lives, because yeah, as you said, it becomes static. People just don't think about it. But when I explain my job and I say, oh yeah, I can read the code on that bag because I was on shift while that machine was making that bag and I fixed that machine, that's like a really cool power to have. And when you relate it back, when you relate it in that sense to people, then they're kind of like, oh, wow, like that makes sense. Or when I explain the way that something is made, because I have a friend who asks, I wonder how this product is made. And I can tell them exactly how it's made because I've observed that machine or a machine like it. They really start to understand exactly what millwrights do and just how vital we are. Every trade. I'm never going to single out millwrights. Every trade is reliable for the world operating. And yeah, a lot of people take it for granted.
Yeah, and it's surprising to me too how many people don't know what a millwright does.
Oh, that's my whole life, man. All the time. Even going through a Starbucks drive-through this morning, the woman was like, "Oh, are you guys off to work?" And we're like, "Yeah." She's like, "What do you do?" Said, "We're millwrights." She's like, "I don't know what that is, but that's my life every single day." I
I
just say
bet.
I'm a mechanic. Everybody knows what a mechanic is.
Yeah, it's amazing to me, and I think it just goes to show how little education there is, on a mass scale about the different trades and what they do. Um, so I'm a little curious. I like to talk to whenever I talk to women on the show that are in the trades. I like to get your perspective on that. Because we talk a lot about this skilled trades gap, and you hear everybody complaining about the skilled trades gap and how there's not, a lot of technicians, more technicians are retiring from the industry than entering into it, all of that.
Yeah.
And, so I've been making a big push lately to really open people's eyes to the fact that 50% of the entire population doesn't think that there's a place for them in
Yeah.
the skilled trades. And I think that's ultimately what it boils down to. Everybody thinks the skilled trades, whether it's a millwright or HVAC technician or plumber, they think it's a big boys club,
Yeah.
and historically it has been, you
Mhm.
know, but obviously we're seeing a big shift, which is greatly needed in this industry. So I'm a little curious about your experience being a woman in the trades,
Mhm.
and kind of, how that led to your decision. Did that play a factor at all in you deciding that you wanted to get into the trades? Was it like, oh, I'm thinking about the trades, but I'm a woman, I don't know if there's a
Oh,
spot for me. Yeah.
yeah. I don't think it played a part in me entering the trades. I think it played a part in me spending 2 years of my life wondering if I could do it, if I had the power to do it. And you mentioned that you've interviewed a lot of women lately, and Jamie is actually mostly the reason that I decided to actually go for it and commit myself to the trades. I'd done a lot of research, and I went to a career fair where she was representing the skilled trades and women in skilled trades with one of her organizations. And I just had a really honest talk with her. And I said, hey, this is where I'm at. I think this is the path for me. I don't want to go to university. And she walked me through her apprenticeship, her experience, and made me feel human and made me feel like it wasn't as scary as I thought. I just had no experience in the trades prior. So asking somebody these deeply honest questions, like, is this something I could truly do as a career, that was necessary for me. Having a mentor, a woman who could answer these questions firsthand, was so necessary to me. And that's why I try and play a role. I do some keynote speaking and attend these trades events, because I always think about that. I always think about the woman before me in this position who helped me completely make the decision. Like, she was the reason that I'm here today. So I think there needs to be awareness of women and more outreach in schools, or just to girls, however we can, boys and girls. I mean, both are needed, obviously, but yeah, I think mentorship was the biggest thing for me in deciding. I was just very timid, and I didn't think I had the courage or the ability to work in the trades, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely, obviously I can't relate, but I definitely understand. And I've heard that quite a bit. And quick side note, because you said that you did some public speaking, I had a few months back. I don't know if you know who Bob Baker is, Baker Plumbing. I don't remember what province he works out of, but he was telling me, because he does public speaking as well, and he's a master plumber. He's been doing it for a long time, and he was telling me that after he spoke at one of these conferences or wherever he was, somebody came up to him and said something like, "Oh, wow, you speak really well for a plumber." and Bob's hysterical. He's an awesome guy, and he was just like, "What's a plumber supposed to talk like?"
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? But again, it kind of goes to show the perceptions that are out there. Anyway, I wanted to tell that story, but getting back on track. So having Jamie, as a mentor through this, I'm sure was, like you said, extremely helpful, and probably helped to build a lot of confidence, the confidence that you needed to move forward in this industry. How difficult was it? Why don't we, let me say this, like, what kind of challenges did you experience after you made the decision and you were going through as a woman in the trades?
Lots.
Yeah.
Lots of challenges. Yeah. I'm finally getting to a point in my apprenticeship and in just growing up and becoming a woman where I can finally come home and leave a lot of the shit in my workday. And it's the most phenomenal feeling. It's taken a long time to get my confidence to where I am like today. But I think the first problem was, as I mentioned, after high school, I went into a pre-apprenticeship program for millwright. And the biggest challenge with that was that I was 19. I was one of the youngest in the class. I entered this program I was actually the only woman. There were 52 students, and I was the only woman in the program. I didn't know anybody going into the program. So to paint a picture, essentially showing up, everybody treated me as though I didn't know anything. When I'd been doing machine shop, like on a lathe milling machine, I'd done welding. I knew what a millwright was, and I had started developing a lot of skills that went into millwrighting. So everybody expected me to be young and dumb, and they treated me like they were holding my hand. And then when it actually got to the shop class and I could prove, no, here, I can turn a step shaft on a lathe, like, when I had that opportunity to prove to them that I wasn't what they thought I was, that was awesome. But before that, there was a lot of prejudice and a lot of people feeling like they needed to go out of their way to accommodate me when I definitely didn't want accommodating, or I don't feel I needed it. And then I think the second part, again, because I did some education before I started working, I'd learned a lot more theory, and I'd learned more about millwrighting as a whole. So I did kind of know what I was going into in terms of the job, but actually showing up to, finding a job, holy mackerel, that was difficult, because in interviews, I don't really feel like most people took me seriously. And as serious as I was wanting an apprenticeship, having paid for the school out of my pocket to prove, hey, I'm serious about this. I want to make this my career. I probably interviewed 20, 25 places, and I got turned away from most. And now I never got any feedback on the reason for that. But it was very difficult for me to find a job when I know a lot of other people in my program, males, were finding employment easily. But aside from that, once I found a job, showing up to job sites and understanding what type of comments, what type of borderline harassment I was going to receive, learning how to kind of put up a shield and just represent who I am and not let those comments or all of that stigma around women in the trades affect me. Just block it out and work through your day. That skill took probably the longest to develop. As I mentioned, I'm finally at a point where I feel really confident, really happy with myself. But yeah, showing up to job sites and being looked at funny, that took a lot of time to get over.
Yeah, I bet. Did that? So two things. I'm curious if that stigma that you felt when you entered into the millwright schooling, with the 52 people in there, did that follow you through like your apprenticeship? Whenever you started somewhere new, did you kind of get that same feeling from the people around you, like she, not really taking you seriously?
Oh, for sure. Being a contractor, I work for a company, so I work with the same employees, but we go into different facilities. Now we don't service way too many facilities. Most of them are small, and I know everybody there now. But starting out, it was definitely a learning curve, having the clients trust me. I feel like it took a few weeks or months with some of them to relax to the point where they understood that I could handle it, and I wasn't just there for the hell of it, that I actually wanted to do them well. So yeah, that on top of college was a huge challenge and learning curve, getting them comfortable with my abilities. And it's awesome now because a lot of the time I show up and they all know my name or they're excited that I'm there. So yeah, it's a great feeling, but starting out is always the hardest part. There's so much to learn. And I mean, you never stop learning, but in terms of understanding how the trades operate, my God, it took some time.
Was it, we're talking a lot about accomplishments and satisfaction. Was it satisfying, for lack of a better term, when you were in that class to rub it in their face a little bit when you could prove that you knew, what you were doing?
Oh yeah, big time. Because I started out with the treatment of, and then it turned into like, hey, we have 2 hours left in this class and you've been done your project for like 3 days. Can you help me? And I truly don't mean that as a brag, but it was awesome to see not every man in the class, but a few of them that I still keep as friends. A few of them kind of bring down that shell and say, okay, she may be a woman, but she knows what she's doing. And for a lot of those men, not a lot of those men, but just a lot of people I work with in particular, they can't really get over that. They can't really get over that yet. Asking a woman for advice or for help, I think it impacts their ego a little bit. So having those people in my life who accepted me for who I was and saw my skill rather than just my gender, that meant so much to me. It was awesome to not so much rub it in their face, but to show that I had something to prove. It was awesome.
Yeah. I like the term rubbing it in their face, but that's just me. No, I totally get where you're coming from, and you're just a whole lot more respectful than I am, and probably tolerant too. But no, that's really cool. And I'm just, I'm curious because I think a lot of people are probably, hopefully a lot of people will be listening to this, and hopefully, they can kind of take your experience at face value and relate it to how they may be perceived, and adversely, be able to deduce from that how they should respond. And I think that the next thing you had already mentioned is the men in the industry having to get over, the fact that their ego, it basically have to check their ego at the door and realize that, this entire industry, everything in the skilled trades is based on one thing: can you get the job done?
Yeah.
And the fact that that's a struggle for some people still blows my mind, because at the end of the day, we all have a job to do. We have an objective, right? We have a directive, and we need to get it done by any means necessary. And there are far worse things in the world than asking a woman for advice,
Yeah.
especially if she knows better than you, or even if she knows a different way than you, you know. Um, and I hear that a lot. So I think that that's a big barrier that a lot of people in this industry have to get over. And let's be honest too, you know, a lot of the companies, the skilled trade companies out there, the owners are of a different generation.
Yeah.
You know, so they've adopted that mindset, you know, from back in the day, you know, when it was actually widely accepted back then, you know. And so they've kind of ingrained that into their company. And I'm not speaking for every company out there, obviously. I'm just saying, you know, I know some in particular where even if it's not a malicious kind of thing, it's just this mindset. And when you have somebody at the top, right, it's the trickle down effect, and those small things, little micro messages, if you will, kind of cascade throughout the company, and it almost makes it feel like it's acceptable behavior, you know.
Yep. It's very unfortunate. I think it is changing. I am pretty fortunate with where I work right now. Something that really stood out in my mind and gave me a good feeling about moving into this position, contracting. I had an interview, my first interview with my bosses. After I'd been hired, they said, you know, your interview went really well. And I asked them, like, you know, did it make a difference that I was a woman and I was interviewing with your company? Because I'm the first woman who's ever worked for this company. And a lot, like, the clients they'd never expect a woman to show up. I'm often the first woman that's been on their job site. And they said, you know, we never for a second doubted that you would make a good apprentice, because we saw that you cared. We saw that you went to school, that you wanted to do this. They said our only objection was, oh my gosh, like, what if she has a baby? What if she gets pregnant? How do we afford her leaving for, you know, a year or whatever maternity would end up being? And I thought, I never thought of that. That's an interesting point, like that crossed their mind. But the fact that they mentioned and they appreciated that they didn't doubt me because they saw the passion coming out of me, that was awesome to hear. To know that I work for people that don't have that mindset, and I'm not constantly, I do face a lot of doubt, but I'm not constantly trying to prove myself. Like, it's not often a chore. They see who I am, and they appreciate me for what I bring to the table.
Yeah. And that's really how it should be. And there's always going to be logistical concerns in one area or another, you know, whether it's with men or women or whoever, but the logistical concerns, like such as what happens if you get pregnant and you've got to take time off, you know, those are just things that we naturally have to figure out as business owners. And but as long as they don't let it inhibit their decision, which obviously they didn't, you know, they just basically, what they did is they discovered a solution, you know, because they brought you on, right, and they knew that this could be an issue, so it's going to force them to think about it. And, you know, all it takes is a few people to come up with a solid plan, which they already have, you know, I'm sure across the globe for this. And then there's a blueprint, you know, so it's no longer a concern.
Well, on that topic, I think another thing that makes people uncomfortable with women in the trades, perhaps, is that just historically, there haven't been a lot of women working in this industry. So for a small company like where I work, it's new territory, it's new ground. They never would have thought that they need to account for a maternity leave. And now I think it makes people like a little uncomfortable, or it puts them in situations that they never thought that they would be in. And there's a little bit of gray area with accepting a woman onto your team and into the trades. There's a lot of area that you'd never have to talk about. You'd never think that you'd have to talk about. And now we do, because it's a reality and it's only getting more popular, right? So I think the discomfort is what psychs people out, if you get what I mean.
Absolutely. It's also, it's how you look at it, right? Because it's also what makes people grow. It's also what makes companies grow. And I mean, you know, if everybody were to look at it like this, like, yes, you know, there are logistical concerns such as that, but what happens if we completely close this skilled trades gap? and every skilled trades company out there completely thrives because now more women are entering the industry, more kids are entering into the industry. You know, I mean, all of this stuff there, it's a bigger picture. You know what I'm saying? And it still takes personal responsibility on everybody's part. It still takes personal responsibility from the business owner. It takes personal responsibility from you, you know, and your counterparts, and you know, so it's a collective effort. You know, as long as we're all working in the same direction, which is the point.
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree.
Yeah. So, off the woman subject for now. You know, I don't want to bore you too much with that.
That's okay.
But I'm curious, what aspect of what you do you love the most? Is it that sense of accomplishment we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, honestly, I would say so. That was what pushed me to be a mechanic. And what I like about millwrighting is that it's a split in my position, being able to do a bunch of different contract work, basically whatever the client wants, we do. I enjoy fixing things more than I enjoy building things. So when I was looking at construction or industrial, I thought I I love welding, and I thought maybe I want to be a welder. But then I examined, like, could I do this same thing day in and day out? And I just didn't think personally it would be enough variety for me because I get bored quite easily. But as a millwright, if the client wants anything, you know, custom plumbing, if they want electrical, if they want a custom fab project, welding, if it's stainless steel, mild steel, any type of welding, like, we really do it all. And being able to overlap all of my skills, even carpentry, ship out like a pump, that's connecting all of these skills that you could find in other trades, but bringing it into one. I think that, along with the satisfaction of fixing something, is what I enjoy most about millwright, because every day is different and it really never gets old. And to keep me interested within a career, I need to see something new. I need to be constantly learning. And when I talk about my career in the trades, I always mention that I'm so lucky that I'm in a position that I get to learn something new every day. And I remember early on, who was it? Honestly, I can't even remember where it was. But something that's always stuck with me about millwrighting, someone once told me, the day you stop learning is the day that you retire. And I think that's so true, because around the world working on these machines, in millwrighting, you learn about the basics, like what makes a machine a machine. If it's, as I said, the plumbing or the types of bearings that go into it, the shafts that run through it. You learn the basics, but you never really learn anything perfectly. So that's why millwrights often considered the jack of all trades. So taking that knowledge and knowing, okay, well, from past experience, I did this with this machine, but you're looking at something totally different. You just know, okay, how did I remove this type of bearing? And relating it all back together in my mind, constantly problem solving. I love that aspect because that keeps me engaged and ensures that it never becomes mundane. Like, I never get bored with it.
Yeah, you get the best of everything, and you're able to, and you know, I talk a lot about transferable skills too, and the amount of things that a millwright does as far as the mixing of the trades. I mean, there's just so much that you can learn that you can apply to everyday life as well.
Absolutely.
Which is something that we should all strive to be able to do. I mean, whether you're in the trades or not, there is a practical sense to being able to fix something small around the house, or put a chain back on a bicycle, for God's sake. You know, I mean, really, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I have like two quick examples of that. About a year ago, my parents had a sump pump in their basement that went, and my dad was like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll just go to Lowe's and I'll, grab a new one." And he was going to get like a full basin. It's like a sump pump under their sink, so it's a basin and it pumps it like back up outside the basement. And I said, "No, Dad, like, let me just look at it. It's just a little sump pump." And he was like, okay. So I looked at it and I took it out. I diagnosed the problem. It was actually the float switch, but it was all one unit, so I couldn't remove the float switch. So we found a pump for like $80, ran down and grabbed it, and I ended up saving them almost $300. And I think for my dad, that was like such a cool opportunity to show him that this is what I do. This is what I do for a living, but on like such a small scale, because it's a sump pump this big when I'm used to working on pumps that are taller than me, right?
Yeah.
So that was an awesome, like, firsthand example for my parents. And then also, when I did a co-op in automotive, I was just used to doing like oil changes, lubrication. But now I have a bad wheel bearing on my car that's been driving me crazy, and I'm going to like buy the wheel bearing and press it out myself. That type of skill, being able to save myself the money, but also know that that car's on the road because of something that I got paid to learn how to do. Like, are you kidding me? That's so valuable. I love it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I have basically the same example with my toaster oven at home. I mean, my wife came to me and said the toaster oven stopped working. I said, no, it didn't. Let me look at it. And, so I took it apart. There was a bad relay, and I admittedly don't tell anybody this, but I didn't replace the relay. I bypassed it. I know that's a big no, but we wanted the toaster oven for that night. So, but,
Yeah.
but you know what, that's, and again, going back to the accomplishments, right? It's those little things too, that's completely outside the job, that then you take a look and you say, not only did I fix that, but now, I can do this for my family. I saved my family this amount of money, or now my family can cook the pizza they wanted to cook,
Exactly.
whatever it is. So very interesting stuff. I can't believe we've already almost been talking for an hour. I swear I could talk to you all day.
Yeah,
so,
it has gone fast.
Yeah. So I'm going to, I like to ask everybody this question, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. So and I think I talked at the beginning of this episode a little bit about success and how everybody defines it differently. And, what we should be doing is supporting what young people's definition of success is to them. I mean, assuming they don't want to be like a Lord of War or, a politician or something. But just kidding, everybody listening. Not really. I'm not kidding. Don't be a politician. Anyway, everybody has their own definition of success, right? So I'm curious what your definition of success is, and how what you're doing today as a millwright is helping you achieve that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think success to me just means being happy in my career, being happy in my choices up to this point, and just taking a lot of pride in what I do. And even if my decision to enter the trades wasn't what people expected of me, for them to understand that I do see myself as successful in the position that I am, living on my own, supporting my lifestyle, debt-free, and happy, getting up early in the morning to go to work and being happy with that. That is successful to me. And I remember in high school, everybody says, the most important thing is just to find something, do what you love, and you never work a day in your life. I think that's true, but I think that has to be attainable. If we could all be happy and do as minimal work as possible and be happy, we'd all be set. That would be like the ultimate goal, right? But to do something that makes me happy and that is extremely interesting, like profitable, it supports everything that I could want, that to me is successful. I go to bed happy, and I wake up and I take pride in what I do. And yeah, that's success.
Sounds like a pretty good definition of success to me.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think a lot of people probably relate to that, and at least a version of it. And it just goes to show how it can be achieved with a career in the skilled trades.
Yeah.
So, Kate, where can people find you?
My best platform was probably Instagram. My handle is @millwright.kate. Nice and easy.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah. Kate, thanks so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate you talking to me.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was honestly awesome just chatting and getting to know you a little better. That was fantastic.
Likewise. Hopefully, you know what, I have a lot more questions that I could ask you, so maybe we'll do it again soon.
Of course. I'd love that.
All right. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.